The hotel ballroom shimmered with too much gold. Lights bounced off polished silver. Waiters in black suits floated between tall glasses and empty laughter, and everyone looked just a little too perfect. It was the kind of dinner where you smiled, without meaning it, where everyone had stories, but no one really listened. Ana de Armas sat at the far end of the table, quiet, her dress soft against the velvet of the chair. She smiled when someone glanced her way, but they looked past her like she was part of the wallpaper. The chair beside her stayed empty. Her name had been on the guest list, but not in their conversations. They spoke around her, over her, with words sharp like diamonds, film executives, producers, influencers with voices that filled the room. And in that room, Ana shrank a little. Not physically, but inward, like someone pulling a blanket tighter without making a sound. She stirred the water in her glass. The ice melted slower than the night moved. Someone laughed loudly near the center of the table. She looked up, hopeful. It wasn't for her. 2 chairs down, a man told a story about a yacht in 4 countries and a sunset that didn't exist. Across the table, a woman with high heels and higher opinions spoke about a director like she owned his name. No one asked Ana about her last film. No one noticed her fingertips curling slightly on the linen. Keanu Reeves had arrived late. Not fashionably, just late. He never tried to impress. His black suit wasn't pressed sharp like the others, but it was real. Worn, familiar. He stood at the edge of the room for a moment, taking in the scene, noticing. That was the difference. He noticed things. He noticed the empty chair beside Ana, and he noticed her eyes. They weren't sad, not exactly. But there was something in them like the flicker of a candle in wind. She didn't show discomfort. She just existed quietly, and that silence said more than anyone else's performance. Keanu didn't ask. He didn't wave or smile from across the room. He walked toward her with steps that weren't loud but still shifted the air. And without a word, he pulled out the empty chair and sat down beside her. That's when the laughter at the table stopped. For half a second, someone paused mid-sentence. A fork clinked against a plate. People exchanged glances, subtle ones, tight and quick. Not because of Ana, but because of Keanu. He wasn't expected to sit there, not at the quiet end of the table. Not beside the woman they had all chosen to pretend wasn't there. Ana looked at him, her lips parted like she might say something, but he just looked back and gave a soft nod, like he understood already. She smiled, not the kind she had worn all evening, but the kind that held breath. He said nothing. That silence between them was louder than the entire room, and then he picked up the water jug and filled her glass. That's when it began. Not just the dinner, not just the moment, but something more. Because in a room full of attention seekers, he chose presence. And in a world that only saw her beauty, he saw her pause. Keanu leaned closer, not to whisper something funny or flattering, but just to be near enough so she wouldn't feel alone. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Ana blinked. Her throat tightened before she could answer. No one had asked her that all night. "I'm better now," she whispered back. And he smiled, not the actor smile, not the red carpet smile, but the one he kept for moments like this. Moments that didn't need applause. The people at the table returned to their noise. Some kept sneaking glances. A few exchanged smirks, but Keanu didn't flinch. Ana didn't shrink. They talked, not loudly, not to be heard by others. Just two. Each other. She asked how his flight was, told her it had been delayed, but that the woman next to him on the plane had a kind laugh. She smiled at that. Double quotes. "I think she's a school teacher," he said. She showed me pictures of her dog. Laughed softly. It's the first real laugh of the evening. Then he turned to her fully. "What about you?" he asked. "I'm here." She said. He looked at her like that answer meant something, and maybe it did, because sometimes just being there is the hardest thing to do, especially when you feel unseen. But now, she wasn't alone. Not in that chair, not in that silence, not in that crowded room that had tried to erase her presence. She was seen, and it changed everything. Not just for the night, but for what came next. And what came next would test them both. Because Kindness is powerful, but it's not always safe, especially when it begins to challenge the order of things, especially when the ignored one begins to rise and the quiet one refuses to stay quiet. The next morning, Anna walked into the hotel lobby with her head higher. It wasn't confidence, not yet. It was something softer, a kind of warmth that clung to her shoulders like a shawl. The night before hadn't changed her life. Reminded her of something she thought she lost. Dignity, not the kind you shout about. The kind you carry quietly when someone sees you for who you are. The breakfast meeting was in the garden lounge. The same people, same tailored suits, same smiles, sharp enough to cut glass. But Anna wasn't trying to belong anymore. She just showed up, and that was enough. Keanu was already there, sitting alone at a table with a half-drunk cup of coffee. In a newspaper he hadn't turned the page on for 15 minutes. He looked up the second she entered, not out of obligation, but like he'd been waiting to see her face. "Morning," he said. Anna sat across from him. "Morning." They didn't need small talk. The quiet between them was easy now, but the others noticed. They always notice. Kindness, especially when they don't understand it. Across the lounge, a woman in a red blazer leaned over and whispered something to the man beside her. He chuckled, then looked at Anna for a second too long. Anna saw it. Keanu did too. "You want to move?" he asked. "No," she said, steady. "Let them look." And that's when she knew something had changed in her, not because he saved her, but because he reminded her she didn't need saving. The next event was a panel discussion on creative collaboration. Anna was scheduled to speak third. Keanu wasn't even on the lineup, but they'd invited him last minute, he agreed. Not because he needed the exposure, but because he'd heard Anna was speaking. The room was wide, bright, filled with lights and layered microphones and names printed on glossy cards. When Anna took her seat on the stage, the applause was polite but lukewarm. Keanu sat on the far end, quiet. The moderator smiled tightly. "Anna, you've worked with several directors in very different settings. How do you manage collaboration? When your ideas don't feel heard?" Anna hesitated. Her fingers gripped the microphone lightly. "I listen," she said. "Even when others don't listen back." Few in the audience shifted in their chairs. She continued, "I've learned that presence is louder than volume, and sometimes silence can be more powerful than control." The room grew still, but one man on the panel, someone from a major production house, smirked. "But silence doesn't get results. Strong voices do, especially in this business." Anna looked at him, her voice still gentle. "Then maybe we need to redefine what strong means." And Keanu, he smiled without a word. The audience clapped louder this time, but behind the scenes, not everyone clapped. Later backstage, a producer she once worked with approached her. He wore a smile too wide and words too careful. "You're sounding different lately," he said. "More honest," she replied. His smile didn't move. "Be careful with that." Anna didn't answer. Keanu walked up a second later and stood beside her. The producer looked between them. "You two are becoming quite the pair." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "She's just finally being treated the way she deserves." That was the first time someone used the word deserve around her without conditions. That night, Anna sat alone on a bench in the garden courtyard, looking at the stars through the leaves. She felt the weight of the day settle in her bones, not heavy. Just real. She heard footsteps behind her. "You always show up," she said before turning. Keanu sat beside her again, like he belonged there. "You always stay," he said softly. They watched the stars for a while, and Anna said, "I think people are uncomfortable when kindness takes up space." Keanu nodded slowly. "Because it can't be bought or controlled." She looked at him. "They don't know what to do with us." "Okay," he said. "We know what to do with each other." And that silence between them, again, it wasn't empty. It was full of truth. What they didn't know yet was that things were about to shift again, because the next day would bring a decision, an offer, and a test one would show whether kindness could survive pressure and whether two people standing together in quiet defiance, could make something louder than fame. The sun didn't rise gently that morning. It came in sharp through the tall hotel windows, slicing across the floor like it had something to prove. Anna stood in front of the mirror, not checking her reflection but breathing. Slow, steady breaths. It was the first time in a long while she wasn't rushing to become someone else. She was just trying to stay herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from her agent. Urgent. Need to meet now. Anna sighed. Meetings were never just meetings. They were often pressure wrapped in coffee and fake concern. She slipped on her coat and made her way downstairs. In the lobby, her agent stood near the fireplace, pacing. When she saw Anna, she lit up with a rehearsed smile. Good, you're here, she said quickly. You're not going to believe this. Anna said nothing. She just waited. We got a call, the agent continued. A lead role. Huge studio. But here's the twist. She dropped her voice. They want Keanu too. Both of you together? Anna blinked. Both of us? Yes. They saw the panel, the dinner stories already bouncing through back channels. The quiet revolution, someone called it. They think you and Keanu are marketable. Soft-spoken, strong-willed. The new kind of leading duo. Anna took a step back. What's the catch? The agent hesitated. They want control of the story. Media presence, scripted interviews, the whole image, and they want the contract signed. Today. Anna didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, she turned and walked toward the garden where Keanu usually sat alone with his coffee. She knew where he'd be. Sure enough, he was there, sipping slowly. Looking out at the koi pond like he was trying to learn from the way the fish moved through. Stillness. She sat beside him. He glanced over. Bad news? She shook her head. Complicated news? And she told him everything about the offer, the control, the urgency. Keanu listened without interruption. When she finished, he just leaned back and said, Do you want it? Anna looked down at her hands. I don't know. Then we don't sign. Not until you do. That was it. No pressure, no push, just space. And sometimes space is the rarest gift. Anna nodded slowly. Thank you, he smiled. We can go see the contract, together. They walked into the meeting room as a unit. The producers were all ready, their slick smiles, fake charm, handshakes that lasted too long. They handed over the printed scripts, the brand decks, the press rollout plans. Every page detailed how to turn Anna and Keanu into something that would sell, not real people-products. Anna flipped through the pages slowly. Something inside her began to pull away. One of the producers leaned forward. You two would be the face of something new. Quiet strength, emotional honesty, but polished. What does polished mean? Keanu asked, voice soft but firm. The man laughed. Well, ... not too political, not too personal. Keep the focus on the film, and we'll handle the narrative. Anna stared at him. You mean ... silence the real parts. He shrugged. It's just branding. Keanu placed the script down on the table. Then maybe you should look for actors who want to be branded. The room fell silent. Anna looked at him, and in that moment, she knew she wasn't going to sign. Not because it wasn't a good deal, but because it wasn't her. Deal. They both stood. The agents protested. The producers looked stunned. You're turning this down? One asked. Keanu smiled gently. We're just choosing something else. They walked out together. Outside the building, Anna paused. The wind brushed through her hair like applause from the earth itself. Was that the right choice? She asked. I don't know, Keanu said honestly. But it was the right moment. They laughed quietly together. But what they didn't know was that someone had been watching. A journalist. Young, unnoticed. Sitting in the corner with a notebook and a sharp eye. And that journalist had caught every word. What happened next would spread. Like a match to dry leaves. But not just a scandal. Not just a story. A shift. Because sometimes the quietest people light the biggest fires. And sometimes The ones ignored at dinner end up leading the whole room. The article dropped 3 days later, no warning. No pre-release calls, no approved quotes, just a story written like it had been waiting for years to be told. When silence speaks louder than fame, the night Keanu Reeves chose presence over prestige, it opened with a quiet description of that dinner. How the lights were too bright, how the laughter rang hollow, how one woman Anna de Armas sat at the end of the table, untouched by attention, wrapped in quiet grace, and how one man Keanu Reeves walked across a room full of powerful people, not to impress them, but to sit beside someone they had forgotten. The story described their garden talks, the backstage stares, and finally, the offer they turned down, an offer most actors would fight to receive. The article didn't make them heroes. It made them human. And that was exactly why it struck a nerve. It went viral in hours, not the manufactured kind of viral, not hashtags planted by marketing teams. Real viral. The kind where people stopped scrolling, leaned back, and whispered, this feels different. Anna's phone buzzed nonstop. So did Keanu's. Producers, actors, strangers. Some said thank you. Some said, are you crazy? Others said nothing, but you could feel the silence differently now. Anna sat alone in her room. As the article opened on her screen, fingers still. She wasn't used to being seen this way. Not as decoration, not as gossip, but as someone with a center. Keanu called, no hello, no preamble. You okay? Anna smiled, tears closed but not falling. I think so, she said. Are you? I'm good, he said. But things are about to change. And he was right. Later that day, a call came from a small indie director. A woman. No publicist. No entourage. I read the article, she said. I don't have a huge budget, but I have a story. And I want you both to read it. No pressure. No scripts. Just see if it speaks to you. Keanu and Anna met that night in a quiet cafe, script in hand. It wasn't shiny, it wasn't safe, but it was honest. The story followed two strangers, one who had lost her voice in a world too loud, and another who carried grief in his silence. They didn't fall in love quickly. They sat beside each other first. They healed, listened. Anna finished the last page and looked up. Keanu was already watching her. This is the one, she said. Yeah, he replied. They called the director. The next morning said yes. No agents, no negotiations. Just yes. Word spread fast. Some in the industry rolled their eyes. Career suicide, they whispered, but others leaned in. New faces, new voices. Young actors and old veterans who had been waiting for someone to take the first step back toward meaning. When filming began, it wasn't in a soundstage. It was on a hillside in New Mexico, beneath a sky that didn't care about celebrity Anna. Wore no makeup, Keanu brought his own clothes. There were no assistants. No trailers, but there was truth. They filmed a scene where Anna's character sits in silence while people around her talk over her. Again and again, the director said, don't act. Just remember. Anna closed her eyes. She remembered that dinner. She remembered the empty chair, and then she remembered the moment it wasn't empty anymore. Keanu sat beside her in the scene. No lines, just presence. The crew didn't speak for a long time after cut was called. It felt like something had broken and healed in the same breath, but what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that a studio executive had just flown in quietly, uninvited, curious. He stood off in the trees, watching not to control, but because someone told him, if you want to see what's next, go watch them. He stood there, jacket open in the wind, and for the first time in years, he didn't take notes, he just watched. The world was watching, too. And somewhere deep inside it, a question was starting to form. What if this wasn't just a story? What if it was a beginning? The film wrapped in 31 days, not because they rushed, but because every scene felt like a truth already waiting inside them. There were no delays, no tantrums, no forced rewrites, just moments, real ones. On the last day of filming, as the crew packed cables into crates and the sun dipped low behind the hills, Anna stood at the edge of the field and watched the sky go gold. Keanu stood beside her, hands in his jacket pockets. Do you think they'll get it? She asked softly. Maybe. Not everyone, he said, but the ones who need it will. The studio that financed the project wasn't big. They didn't have flashy marketing money. No viral campaign, no teaser leaks, just one screening scheduled in a tiny theater in Los Angeles for industry folks. And whoever cared enough to come on a Tuesday night, Anna and Keanu didn't dress up. They sat in the back row. The lights dimmed. And then, silence. It wasn't the polished kind. It was the kind that held breath. On screen, Anna's character sat at a dinner table, unseen. Then Keanu's character walked in, sat beside her without saying a word. The theater didn't breathe in that scene. Nobody spoke for 2 minutes straight, but it felt louder than thunder. By the end of the film, silence had become something else. A mirror. When the credits rolled, no one clapped at first. Not because they didn't like it, but because they didn't want to break. It's a spell. Then one person stood, an editor, then a lighting tech from another film, then someone else, until the entire theater rose, not with cheers, not with applause, just stillness. Anna sat frozen in the back row, tears soft in her eyes. They understood. She whispered. Keanu nodded, jaw tight. He didn't cry. But something inside him shook like it had been waiting for release. The next day, everything changed. An article about the film called it a quiet storm. It spread faster than the first film festivals called. Interviews were requested. Magazine covers started shifting from loud celebrities to soft faces with steady eyes. But Anna and Keanu turned down most of the requests. They said yes to only one, an interview with the same young journalist who had written the first article. They met in a bookstore cafe. No cameras, no handlers, just 3 mugs of tea. "Why this story?" the journalist asked. Anna leaned forward. "'Cause it wasn't about acting," Keanu added. "It was about remembering what matters, and what matters." The journalist asked, "Being seen," Anna said, "and showing up." Keanu finished. The journalist paused, then asked, "You do know. You've started something, right?" Keanu smiled. "We didn't start it. We just didn't ignore it." Behind the scenes, something else was happening. The studio executive who watched from the trees during filming. He went back to his boardroom and made an announcement that shook the building. "We're funding 10 new projects," he said. Low-budget actor-driven. No media strings. Someone laughed in the room. He didn't. "People are tired of noise," he said. "They want meaning again." And all across the industry, quiet voices began to rise. New writers, forgotten directors, background actors, who finally got callbacks, because sometimes all it takes is one quiet act of defiance to open 1,000 locked doors. But not everyone liked the shift, and not everyone stayed quiet. A scandal was coming, fabricated, weaponized, meant to tear apart the simplicity. They had built Anna and Keanu didn't know it yet, but the world was about to test everything. They stood for, not in private, but on a stage far bigger than a dinner table. The article hit without warning. A headline written to sting. Ana de Armas and Keanu Reeves walked away from Hollywood where they ever really wanted. It was cold, cutting, wrapped in fake concern, but dripping with suggestion. Ice. It came from a well-known outlet, the kind with deep pockets and deeper grudges. The piece didn't attack their work. It attacked their motives. Manufactured humility, calculated. Rebellion. They didn't turn down the system. They used it. Anna stared at her phone for too long. The screen didn't blink. Her hands Didkin was in the piece too. A quiet jab. He plays the silent hero, but isn't silent sometimes just indifference with better lighting? She called him. He answered on the first ring. "You read it?" she asked. "I did." She waited for the usual calm, a soft perspective, but his voice stayed still. "Does it matter?" he finally asked. Anna didn't answer, because it did. Even if it shouldn't, they hadn't asked for praise. But they weren't ready for the betrayal either. The piece made waves. Some people shared it with judgment, others with heartbreak. Fans defended them. Critics leaned in, the industry watched. But the worst part wasn't the article. It was the invitation that followed, A last-minute panel on authenticity in film they were asked to attend, to speak, to explain. Keanu wanted to decline. Anna didn't. "We sat quietly once," she said.
Maybe it's time we stand.
And so they did. The event was packed. Cameras, microphones, streaming live, every seat filled. Every eye watching for the moment they'd fold or flinch. Anna walked on stage first. She wore no designer dress, just a black blouse and quiet eyes. Keanu followed behind her. He looked like someone who didn't owe anyone anything, but still showed up. The host greeted them with smiles that didn't reach his eyes. "We're here to talk about truth," he began. "So let's begin there. Were your choices really about the work, or about crafting a new image?" Anna took the mic first. "I didn't craft anything," she said. "I just stopped pretending." The room shifted. People don't like when you walk away from the table they set, especially if you do it quietly. Keanu leaned forward. "I didn't walk away from anything. I just sat where I saw someone being left out." Anna looked at him. A memory flashed. The first dinner, the empty chair, the way he pulled it out, like it belonged to her all along. "We never asked to lead," Anna said. "We just asked to be present." Someone in the audience raised a hand, a young actress, barely 20. Wide eyes and a voice that trembled when she spoke. "What do I do when no one listens?" Anna looked right at her. "Don't wait to be invited," she said. "Take your seat." Keanu added, "And if there's no chair, ... bring your own." Silence again, but this time it was held like reverence. After the panel, they stepped outside into the cold evening. No reporters, no cameras, just the wind. "They'll write another one tomorrow," Keanu said. Anna nodded. "Let them." "You tired?" "Yes," she said, "but not empty." And then something happened. Not on camera, not for headlines, just a group of young actors came out the doors behind them, nervous, grateful, carrying scripts and backpacks, and dreams in their eyes. One of them walked up and said, "You made us believe again." Anna didn't cry. She just whispered, "Thank you for seeing us." The young actor looked at Keanu. "You moved your chair?" Keanu gave a small smile. "You'll do the same someday." And with that, they left, not in a limo, not surrounded by flashbulbs. They just walked down a quiet street, side by side to people who weren't louder than the world, but stronger than its noise. And somewhere in that silence, a movement began. Not to be famous, not to be followed, just to remind people, you don't have to shout to matter. You don't have to fight to be kind. You just have to notice the person no one else does. Sit beside them.